Namaskaram and welcome to episode 101 of Daily Global Insights. This is February 18th and I'm your host Sri Iyer along with co-panelist Sridhar Chityalaji. Sridharji, Namaskaram and welcome to PGurus channel.
Namaskaram and good morning to everybody on this wonderful snowing day in Manhattan. We're just seeing the early flakes.
We are going to start today with a recap of what has been happening between United States and Tibet. And amidst all the election frenzy, we had mentioned this as a line item, but perhaps many of you may not have been aware of it. But on the 22nd of December 2020, there was a bill that was passed in both the Senate and the Congress about Tibet, and a $1.2 billion aid has been allocated for this purpose. And the act is called the Tibetan Policy and Support Act, and it is going to pave way for the United States government to issue economic and visa sanctions against Chinese officials who interfere with the succession of the Dalai Lama. There are four key items that were agreed to upon that. And to understand a little bit more, let us join Sridharji. Sridharji, can you please expand on what this resolution means? Does it mean that the United States now has thrown the gauntlet to China to say that Tibet has to be excluded from your rest of the stuff, at least within the whatever the limits of the thing? US is not saying we are freeing Tibet, but they are trying to recognize the autonomous region of Tibet.
Indeed, I think that if everybody, this is a pretty much a known secret. Tibet, Dalai Lama conducts his government from the Dharmasala in Himachal Pradesh region of India, right? The objective is that they can't permanently live in exile, and the Tibetan people have to manage their affairs from Tibet. The Tibetan Buddhism is one of the largest followed Buddhist principles in the world. And so therefore, they feel the first and foremost priority is no Dalai Lama should be chosen and anointed on people of Tibet by China. It should be chosen by Mr. Dalai Lama himself. That's the first one. The second is that it should be recognized as an independent autonomous region, so the governance should be determined by its people rather than somebody being imposed or rather than anointed to manage the affairs. That's what happens typically in Hong Kong. Now, Hong Kong is fully integrated. The democratic legislative components or people have been removed. So it's very much, rah, 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 China. That's what goes on there. So they didn't want that to happen. There's a fundamental difference as to why Tibet is different to any other place. That's number two. The third is the establishment of a U.S. embassy in Lhasa, and with an intent that it's able to be an arbitrator if required in this constant and persistent conflict between Tibet and the main Chinese government, or the CCP. And the last is that it is also home to the largest natural river system in the world. So the ecosystem needs to be preserved, and the environmental aspects need to be taken care. So these, and then US said it would like to have some mechanism to monitor and make sure that that process or that aspect of it is preserved. So these were essentially the four principles. And out of the stimulus bill number 2, which is the $910 billion, if you remember that there was kind of the other items, and in that there was a $1.2 billion allocated specifically for Tibet. So they just came to a compromise because they didn't want the Tibetan thing to be cut out, and that was very important to me. So money, resolution, bipartisan. This is not Republican or Democrat. It's a bipartisan resolution. I think something like 92-0 or 92-2 in the Senate, this resolution was passed.
And viewers, we are going to have a detailed look at the LAC, at the rail construction of China, and the implications and so on and so forth, just a little bit into this news segment. But first, let us take a look at the United States news. It appears that Trump is back. He has been doing the TV channel circuit, and also some sort of a resolution in trying to group the party together to move forward for the 2022 election, sir?
Indeed, I think that his two interviews yesterday, one with Newsmax and the other with Sean Hannity show in Fox. Very great interviews, reaffirming that he enjoyed the 4 years, and a lot to be done, and obviously mildly touching on the election. And he was very candid, which is effectively to state that he is going to support those people who back MAGA, which is Make America Great Again. And he has a great following, and the core conservative principles of GOP to be preserved. See, I think he was particularly displeased with Mitch McConnell's statement as far as Romney and Cassidy and Raymond Burr, etc. These things, are known, and also Portman, who did not support him in Pennsylvania. So I think that his objectives are very clear, which is, how do I support the candidates, and how do we take back the House and Senate in 2022? He is going to do everything that is within his powers to enable that.
And there's a realistic chance that the Republicans might do better than what they did in 2020 in 2022, because all of a sudden the president of the party, the presidential election does not become the core issue when people go for elections. It will be more on the performance overall, how the candidates are, the one-on-one races that might happen. So we have to wait and see how that plays out. To me, this is a continuing mystery that the Republicans gained so many seats across the United States in the Congress, and yet ended up on the losing side as far as the presidency is concerned, considering that everybody votes at the same time for both their state as well as for their president. So anyway, that is something that we are going to segue into the next item that we are going to talk about, that there is a group of senators and congressmen from the GOP who are beginning to now talk about electoral reforms. Why are the Democrats not willing to also talk about it? After all, a fair election is in the interest of everyone, isn't it?
Indeed, sir. I think one side has won the election decisively, right, according to them, which is to say if President Trump got 75 million votes, President Biden got 81 million votes. So therefore, hey, we have done well. We managed the postal ballots. There's nothing kind of proven, etc. So their reform focuses more around eliminating IDs and eliminating this driver's license, getting more illegal aliens participating in being included in the census process, etc., which really doesn't fit and align with the true kind of the sovereignty of the nation. That is the view of the Republicans. So Republicans are saying that we need to go back to the drawing board and look at this whole caboodle of absentee ballots, and how the absentee ballots or how the absentee votes needs to be dealt with. And there should be consistency of guidelines in terms of the cutoff times, cutoff dates. And the legislature, it is the only mandate of the legislature to actually enact the rules and execute the process. There cannot be an executive branch, and there cannot be a judicial branch interfering in the process. And there has to be legal mechanisms to curtail that. Now, in the absence of that, we saw kind of massive chaos and kind of confusion. We had process issues. We had issues around the timings. We had issues around who got allocated and who didn't get allocated. We got deadlines extended. We had seen rules being amended by the judicial and executive branch. So all these things created problems with 6 states electing to vote, electing to object. That case, by the way, is coming up for hearing tomorrow, February 19th, in Supreme Court.
Yes, indeed, and we will carry what happened on the 20th edition of Daily Global Insight. That will be on the Friday, I should say maybe Saturday. We'll see how it goes. If we need to, we can have a special session. But a most important thing here is that we have to look at the entirety in terms of electoral reforms. It has to be done. It is a must. This gerrymandering that both sides have accused each other of, every time there is a Democratic Party in the state, then they try to do their own redistricting and gerrymandering, and the thing goes to the other side. As a matter of fact, there was a town hall meeting that President Biden addressed, and CNN has found a few anomalies in the statements that President Biden made, especially with respect to illegal voters, the number of voters that are there. So I would encourage all our viewers to watch that CNN video, as well as the fact checking that CNN has done. So moving on, we have other items that are of interest. So there is, looks like now there is a more and more a clarity coming in terms of how the Republican strategy has to be. Lindsey Graham has said that Trump is key to the GOP winning back seats in the House and in the Senate. How do you see this spat between President Trump and Mitch McConnell, sir? There has been now accusations and counter accusations. How do you see that thing ending, especially in the light of the statement of Trump, where he says that this guy was going to lose, I went and helped him win, and this is how he pays me back, or something to that effect?
Well, there's the three important drivers which we have captured in the news. One, Tim Scott has stated that President Trump is the most influential political figure. Lindsey Graham has stated it is pivotal that for Republicans to gain control of the House and the Senate, it's important that President Trump, who is most popular, is at the helm and driving this process. And right in Kentucky County, there is a growing chorus that Mitch McConnell should resign as the Republican Senate leader and to be replaced by the appropriate person who aligns with the policies of the broad constituency of the Republican Party. Now, that is further reaffirmed by a poll conducted within the Republican Party. I don't recall exactly the name of the agency which conducted the poll, which looked at the ratings and rankings of the performance of the past presidents. President Trump gets 36% of the votes. President Reagan gets 18%. So he's almost twice the most successful, one of the three most successful U.S. presidents. Obviously, Bill Clinton is another. And then, of course, coming behind is George Washington and Lincoln. So the story is that even within the Republican Party, we had cited in the other poll, which is 75% for him to start something. And now this particular poll reaffirming his leadership and contribution. So the Republican Party is going to see some changes. And what that means to Mitch McConnell, because to answer your specific question, is whether he will voluntarily step down or whether he will change his mindset remains to be seen. He has been the most confusing and little polarizing figure. He took all the help that he wanted from President Trump when close to $75 to $80 million was spent to oust him from Kentucky by the Democratic Party. Then he took the help, he scraped through, and why he's turning away from Trump, we don't know. Okay, there's a lot of speculation, but we don't know. So I can see the seat getting hotter and hotter by virtue of all these statements that are coming out. So we may see some change, Shriyarji.
And I will add my own 2 cents of speculation in this. I'm dumbstruck that a certain Elaine Chao, who happens to be the wife of Mitch McConnell, finds herself as a secretary in, I think, almost every Republican administration that, as far as I can remember, she's always there. She's doing one thing or the other. I don't know what kind of a value add she brings to the table, but I just find it very striking. So moving on, now let us take a look at the last one line about the stimulus package of the Biden administration. If there are no hiccups, the $1.9 trillion stimulus package of President Biden will be enacted by the 14th of March. It's about a month from now, so it is still taking shape. and we have to see how that goes. But we also mentioned yesterday that the Keystone pipeline closure has drawn a lot of ire from the main constituents, especially the unions, and they have been making their voices heard. So there may be some readjustment, realignment. Perhaps the Biden administration may realize that they lean too far towards the progressives and they may dial something back. We'll have to wait and see how it goes. Now, let's take a quick look at the global news, and we're going to start and you're going to dwell the next 5 minutes on the LAC disengagement. What is happening in the future? Why did China do what it did? For example, withdraw all their tanks and so on and so forth. So, viewers, I would like all of you to look at an interview retired Lieutenant General or Lieutenant General Ravi Shankar gave. The link for that was posted in yesterday's episode. I encourage all of you to watch it because this is one thing from somebody who has seen action, who knows the area very well, and who has analyzed it extremely, I would say, in unbiased fashion. What is happening? Why, even if India were to withdraw from what is called as Kailash Heights, it doesn't matter because the terrain is very gradual slope that India can always go back and get it. After all, they got it while the Chinese were breathing down their neck. If you can do it once, you can do it again. What is the strategic withdrawal there? And also, more importantly, what is the grand plan of China? Why did they move back all their tanks? Is it going to be ready for another thing? So what? And also he touches upon the other flashpoints such as the Dawlati Beg Oldie Airport, why that is very key. Now that the infrastructure has been laid out, the roads are now available, India can move troops very quickly. This is going to be a new normal for China. It cannot just like that move. And plus, we are going to share some information in the next few minutes. You will see how India is starting to use some of the new technology that has been made available to it. Sir, I'm going to start with the image of the new rail lines that has got India concerned. I have the first one here. These are two new rail lines that are being constructed by the Chinese. And what are your thoughts on this, sir?
Well, the if you've got, because I'm looking in my computer, the
Yes, yes,
right. So I think you're showing the Hotan
yes,
King Railway as well as the Ingchi Lhasa line, right?
yes,
So
yes,
if you can see, well, let's first go to Ingchi Lhasa line. The Ingchi Lhasa line just is about 40 kilometers closer to Arunachal Pradesh. It runs very close. It is part of a much bigger a connection of, I think, 1600 or 1680 kilometers, which is coming all the way from Chengdu to Yuan region. And from there, this gets connected to this. So therefore, this is going all the way into Chengdu. This allows PLA to mobilize and move troops very rapidly, both on the rail as well as the road. You can see in the map the road connection, but the rail connection is very pivotal. So this is one area which is very, very close. The Indian border can be seen in the map. The second line, which has been going on for quite some time, which is expected to be completed, is the Hotan-Brooking Railway line, which is further up. That goes into the other side. It goes into, I think, 485 kilometers or so, goes into the Aksai Chin area, the province, Xinjiang province around the Aksai Chin area. So this is the second line, which is right at the top. So therefore, they have covered the lateral movement, one going into mainland China, the other going into the actual line of actual control, which is very close to Aksai Chin, which is the occupied region of China by occupied region of India, the Indian region occupied by the Chinese, especially the line of actual control in that Aksai Chin. So you have dual rail lines which have been constructed on the infrastructure side, which gives rapid movement along with the roadways, which does the local networking around the region. Remember, these are terrains. So therefore, it's fairly hazardous terrains in terms of using logistics to move things by air. So they are reliant on many of the stuff either moving from Lhasa in the Tibet, or they are reliant on coming from the mainland China region, especially around the Zhanjiang area. So this is certainly the one which is the Ingchi Lhasa line is of a specific concern to India. Now, mind you, also been a long desired aspiration of China to have this railroad competing with the railroad and the roadway link that India has through Northeast going into it's already built into Myanmar, Cambodia, Myanmar, Vietnam, going all the way up to Thailand. That is the look east policy. So on the other side, we discussed it a little bit. On the other side, we have the South China. So China is competing and wants to have a connection. It's almost like competing from Tibet, broader Tibet. Then, adjacent is that shaded area that you see on the map is, Nepal. So you have, they want to do exactly the same thing that India wants to do, and they're building infrastructure. Now, question when you ask the Indian army, and this is the interview that CIRG is pointing to, they're saying that as long as India can converge and close out the gap on the infrastructure, it's well equipped to deal with these issues. These issues are imminent, and India has to be prepared. India lacked infrastructure and preparedness. That seems to have been, in many, many ways, converged, especially after the Galwan Valley clash, as well as the Ladakh, Galwan and Ladakh Valley clashes.
And viewers, I have the second slide up there where the line is being laid out, and you can almost see how easily China is able to lay its lines. It's almost like a cookie cutting business. You can see there are 4 reapers that are ready to go. Each reaper is looks like at least 100 feet long, and everything is completely mechanized. You flatten the surface and then you just put it, and then you just keep moving forward. Amazing amount of engineering that is going on, and I'm sure India also has similar capability, because now we are seeing that under Minister Nitin Gadkari ji, a lot of kilometers of road is being laid. I think the average now is 30 kilometers a day, which is a very impressive number considering how cantankerous, how noisy, how libellous some of these land acquisition laws can be, and to be able to do at that frenetic pace is very, very remarkable. So let's take a look at the third picture, sir. And this is a terminal that I have a new rail terminal under construction in Hotan, where you are seeing things like it's going to have a petroleum oil lubrication storage tanks, and it's sort of like the last point in this railway line. If I go back to the first picture,
Yeah.
because then users can see that I'm talking about Hotan, which is where the thing ends, and that is pointing very close to Gosthana. You call it Aksai Chin, I call it Gosthana. It's the same thing, but it used to be called Gosthana before the Chinese grabbed it.
Yeah,
Any rate,
I think that the most important aspect that one needs to look at when you look at this picture is, you really have to admire the holistic thinking of the Chinese in terms of how to build an entire facility from transportation to logistics to storage. And obviously, this petroleum storage is effectively to fuel not only in case it's required for their planes, but also most important all their machinery from tanks to other things that they have the capacity to do it. I guarantee you they would also have these cold storage, non-freezing capabilities in that. So it's almost like a bunker, a large full-fledged bunker, which has got almost soup to nuts in terms of being preparedness. So this is not a commercial railroad. This is very clearly a military logistical support railroad is what is being built. The fact that these images are all available through satellite is a reflection that China is clearly delivering the message. In the intelligence industry, in the army, they say that you don't show something that you want to use. here, the very fact that they are showing and demonstrating is a reflection that they're using this as a deterrent by way of strength. The great thing about that is this happened in Doklam, and India did not blink. And India basically stared at the eye of the Chinese. And that's what has resulted in the first successful outcome, military outcome, without, I would say, a major kind of a catastrophic event. The second is the next set of pictures.
Yes, and I have the first of the next set of pictures, which is finger 6 of the Pangong Tso Lake. The top picture, the top half shows all the encampments, all the buildings that were in place, and the bottom picture shows that the complete evacuation has been done and there is nothing remaining. This is finger 6 of the Pangong Tso Lake. Would you like to comment on this, sir, before I go to the next one?
No, I think that it is. I think you have covered it very well. It just basically shows. Well, I think in the next picture we will explain why. It shows that there is, through satellites and through drones, India is very closely monitoring the movement. These are some of the things that India did not have before. One of the other important things that we want to point out is the BEX, bilateral exchange of communication services. So therefore, that deal was signed on the closing days of the Trump administration between Mike Pompeo, Jaishankar, and the National Security Advisor. That means India has now access that covers the Chinese region of the entire movement that happens via the satellite. Okay, India didn't have a satellite access at that point of time for whatever reasons, but today India has by virtue of the U.S. footprint. So what it says to us is, and what this also demonstrates to us is that there's, in India, as you probably know, there's a lot of political guffey that goes on. Did you go? Did he move? Did he move? Did he not move? Do you know whether he moved, etc. So these kind of questions come up. So what you're seeing here is that, yes, they're showing to the world, as well as to, most important, to the Indian politicians, yes, there is a move. And if you want, you can check it out.
And the next picture shows the construction and then evacuation along fingers 7 and 8 of the Pangong Tso Lake. The top picture shows the construction. It's very, very small, but you can see it distinctly when you compare it to the bottom picture where the camp has been completely evacuated. So this is an important point. So this is finger 7 and 8. So we had up until finger 4, India could patrol, but there was a problem from 4 to 8, which India used to be able to do. Now this, I think, is going to be possible again. And there is a very detailed video that I did with Abhijit Iyer Mitra. If you want to get into more specifics, you are welcome to watch that. And this is finger 7 and 8. And let me take a look at the final one, which is on finger 5. So we have now looking at finger 5, again the same thing. Sir, I'll come to you in just 1 second. Let me finish this thing. And you can again see that all the construction is on the left side, and the whole thing has been evacuated and the Chinese have moved back. So there is now proof that all 4 fingers, 5, 6, 7, and 8, the construction has been dismantled and they have moved out. So over to you. You wanted to add something.
No, I think that you have covered those parts. So let's move on to the whatever is it. Are you showing something else next?
No, I think we're done with the pictures. Let's take a quick look at what happened in last August. The Northern Army commander said that last August, India and China were on the brink of getting into an actual war. So in June, if you remember, was the Galwan incident. And then after that, things started progressively escalating. And in August, there was an eyeball to eyeball confrontation. Luckily, nothing happened. You want to recollect for our viewers what happened at that time, perhaps, sir?
No, I think that there was this breach, if you recall, that a bunch of people came, because came threw stones and used hand combat and used what you call crude iron equipment to create harm to Indian army, and India lost about 23 people. And there was that little bridge that needed to be constructed. These our soldiers in the cold, freezing temperatures were very brave, and then they took on the troops, and then the damage that was inflicted, again, hand-to-hand battle, and much praise was received for the bravery of these Indian soldiers who did the hand-to-hand battle. And the number of casualties that the Chinese suffered ranges from anything from 40 to 100, depending on who you speak with, and that could have gone out of control if there was no local station commanders kind of intervening and coming to some kind of a truce. Again, we covered that in one of the shows during that period of time, but that was fairly until Chinese accepted that there was death, and there was a lot of internal tension even within China. And the images showed the Chinese casualties. First, they didn't agree, but then they agreed. They conceded. Then the whole withdrawal started from that point onwards. And there was partial withdrawal. There was no withdrawal. But during that same period, if you recall, Mike Pompeo made no less than 3 visits to India and stood by India, which is to say that United States will be with India. French soldiers, they landed. Britain said it will have boots on the ground. So you had U.S., France, and Britain working with India in that specific phase. Also, the Malabar exercise had just concluded, and still the vessels were not too far off, and President Trump said if required, he will fire Tomahawk missiles from one of those ships if they have to preserve the status quo. So there was a lot of kind of commotion during that period of time, and I think that wise heads prevailed and people negotiated. That was the first sign of disengagement. The disengagement didn't happen. They said Chinese were bringing reinforcements. Hopefully, this is a very constructive disengagement that will help to be each country to be on meeting its obligations.
And in the meanwhile, Quad is again getting the attention of the American government, the Biden government, in what appears to have been a reversal of stand. They have again started becoming actively engaged with the Quad members, and there is a resolution on that from Blinken. Can you please shed a little bit more light on that?
Well, I think the first and foremost, the most important news is that there was a Quad meeting that should have happened today, Asian time, with Blinken calling on the members. The second is that I think that they are reaffirming the support that for the continuation of Quad. I think the resolutions part of it, we haven't got the news as yet, but maybe we'll cover it tomorrow as to what's been agreed. The only thing that has come out is Australia coming out of that session has indicated that United States should come back to transatlantic or trans-Pacific treaty. Okay, United States left during President Trump's time. They have requested that the U.S. should get back into that into the partnership. So this is one of the outcomes that came out of, or at least the Australian ambassador to United States has issued that statement.
And in Myanmar, the monks have also now joined the protest against the dismissal and arrest of Aung San Suu Kyi and her government, and we will keep you posted on the happenings on that. Let's take a quick look at COVID. The COVID diplomacy of India continues to grow, and there has been again some increase in deaths in the United States. Overall, do you think the world has got a better grip on COVID now than before? I'm also reading in India, especially in Mumbai, because they started flying the local trains, that the numbers are again going up.
At least as at this morning, last night, India, as far as India is concerned, it seems to be holding. Whether it's a reporting error or whether it is time delay, we don't know. but less than 100 deaths. India is around 155, 160,000 deaths, relatively low. Things seems to be stable. Even in United States, we were on the brink of around 490,000 or something. We just crossed 500, so it's 502,000. By and large, it seems to be concentrated around Mexico, and almost, the key countries of Europe, such as UK, Germany, France, Spain, all seem to have, three-digit deaths. Obviously, Russia. Brazil is in the top of the chart because they went to party and they picked up. So Brazil, if you take a look at the top four countries, top three countries, it's United States, India, and Brazil, just by virtue of the volumes. But Southeast Asia has done a tremendous job. There seems to be general impression in the markets that, and amongst people, that there is a better control and slowly things will begin to fall in line. The only piece of news that people have to be cognizant of is Pfizer is now confirming or stating that the South African variant can actually, to great extent, mitigate the protection that can come from those who have been vaccinated. That's the only initial data that is being communicated by Pfizer.
Now let's take a look at market before we wrap up today's segment. Sir, in the markets, Bitcoin is scaling 52,000. Crude is going up because US production has fallen by about 40% because of freezes, the ongoing freeze that is still engulfing Texas, and so on and so forth. Why don't you give us a broad overview of the markets? Because inflation remains a fear, retail price sales are up by a significant margin. Why don't you recap the markets for us, and then we can call it a day for today?
Great. I think there are four important headlines in markets, right? First and foremost, the markets went down and then they caught up to reach parity. Why? One is earnings, and second is there is a growing kind of stimulus is not the question. They feel stimulus is inevitable. Growing feeling that the virus is under control. Number two, there is no fear of inflation. The reason being that most of the money that is going from the stimulus supply, right? So therefore, people are spending. Remember, two big drivers that constitute the inflation are not present in the inflation calculation. One is the energy prices, and second is the food prices, right? These two are market gyrations. So therefore, why therefore there is no initial fear of the inflation? Because interest rates are at zero. So that in turn kind of drives many of the facets that are associated with pricing. So therefore, for foreseeable future, they expect interest rates to be kind of zero. So that's the short term. The long term, the interest rates are already climbing. The 10-year interest rates is around 1.3%. Remember, last year, we could get a 30-year mortgage at 2.5%. So that then flows into a whole set of data. Probably we will cover it another day. But you look at the way the household manages. So we saw for the first time the household debt get past $14.6 trillion. The household debt comprises of three essential numbers: mortgages, which went past the $10 trillion, and mortgages were the highest rolled over and new mortgages taken, roughly constituting somewhere around the $480 billion or $500 billion in total by virtue of the debt. The second item that went up is the student loans. Student loan is an astronomical high, like $1.56 trillion. So it went up by about $47 billion. Then the third is the auto loan. So many people use this window to finance their cars. So that went up by about, what's the number that I have? That went up by about $43 billion. Okay, that went up by about $43 billion. Now here's the headline number. The credit cards which is the unsecured loans, which is the second most important tool used in United States for consumer spending, contracted by $108 billion. And during my times in the industry, our average receivables across the credit card industry used to be around the 1 to 1.1, 1.2 trillion dollars at peak. And then during the GFC, it contracted significantly to about $650 billion. It's made its way back. It was around 908 or 910 billion dollars at the start of 2019. It's contracted by $108 billion. So mortgages and credit cards used to be the two big drivers, because both gives a person the opportunity of the disposable income that is outside his payroll for him to go and spend on the three essential things: food, fuel, and also the clothing, right? So those were the three important. So these numbers indicate that besides the stimulus, the household debt or the household finance was effectively used by the consumers, so which kept prices in check, which kept demand growing, and that is what you saw in the numbers. And actually, January sales was 5.3% up against a forecast of about 2 to 2.2%. Now, the last indicator before we close is delinquencies. That is, during any pandemic or economic crisis, delinquencies. That is called those who have not repaid an installment of their loan that is due in 90 days. 180 days is called severely delinquent. You found during this period the delinquency rates are at historical kind of low at 1.25%. Relative to last year, 2019, when I'm discounting 2021. When I say this year and last year, 2020 and 2019, is at 2.36%, which tells you that people, two important reasons: low interest rates, and second, forbearance. So the policies, this is how you judge the policies. The fiscal policy and the monetary policy, fiscal in terms of cash, monetary policy in terms of rates and in terms of dealing with the debt, helped US to be stable. Now, many Indian pundits may come and say, you guys have dollars, you control interest rates, you manage this, you manage that. That's why you are very good at what you do. If India has this, see, my point is very simple. You look at the numbers and you measure the outcome by the numbers. There's nothing that prevents India from doing same thing. There's nothing that prevents India from loosening his interest rates. Nothing prevents from borrowing. Nothing, because the interest rates are zero, effectively zero. If you don't borrow, you don't borrow. So any country for that matter, all Southeast Asian countries have borrowed, and you have seen the V-shaped recovery. We may do a special session on ASEAN. All the ASEAN economies have recovered. They have not complained that, we are not pegged to US dollar. We are not pegged to US dollar. We don't have 0% rates. It also boils down to how the whole fiscal and monetary policy is managed, which in turn helps the consumer to manage his household.
Thank you very much, sir. And I think when you said GFC, you're talking about the great financial crisis of 2008?
Exactly.
Yes. And a small correction to what we mentioned yesterday. Disha Ravi's name is still unclear, whether it is Disha Ravi Matthew or Disha Ravi Joseph, or there is another name that is being touted out. We don't know yet. So we'll just let it play out. We'll take a look at the FIR and see what her name is, and we'll clarify that in a future broadcast. Most important thing is that there was a network that spanned multiple countries, and this was a clear attempt at destabilizing the country of India. Thank you very much. That's all for today, and we'll be back tomorrow. Namaskaram.
Namaskar, and thank you. And it was a long session. Thank you. Thank you so much.